Good evening, Nor'easters. Tonight we're going to discuss something called the Krebs cycle or the citric acid cycle, and we're going to try to Nor'easterize it or take it Nor'easter style for us. You might be wondering, why does this matter for me as a student athlete? Well, my hope is at the end of this 2 to 3 minutes you understand how the Krebs cycle powers literally everything that you do, and it all happens in the mitochondria, which you guessed it, is the powerhouse of the cell. I know most of you have learned that in class. My hope, though, is that you specifically kind of grasp how the Krebs cycle can help you as an athlete every day. So I made this little video in the weight room for us. You know how I like to compare things in the weight room and back and forth to the classroom and your competitive play. So within this little video, what you'll notice are 2 major phases of this whole process. There's another one that's called glycolysis that happens kind of as a precursor to all of this or before this. But what we're going to focus on is the Krebs cycle and then the electron transport chain. So initially what happens, this plate gets spinning here. Pyruvate from glycolysis, the end product of glycolysis, that gives us glucose, okay? The pyruvate's a molecule that's created from that process, joins up with coenzyme A, another molecule, and those two create acetyl-CoA. Acetyl-CoA enters the Krebs cycle, and as that's spinning around, it goes through a number of different transformations and enzymatic reactions, okay? And as those reactions occur, there's all kinds of byproducts that happen. One of those byproducts is NADA, NADH, and as that splits off, that creates hydrogen ions, and that's free energy that basically we can utilize to create more energy. And that helps create what's called ATP, adenosine triphosphate, and ATP is what powers your body. Every single cell in your body runs off of it, your brain, your muscle, your heart, all the things that you need as an athlete to be successful. So the lightning bolt designates our ATP for us here in Nor'easter Nation, okay? And then again, the cycle continues. Another byproduct is FAD plus and FADH2. All of that helps. They are what are called electron shuttles, NADH and FADH2. They take all of the hydrogen ions and they shuttle them over to the electron transport chain right here, okay? That chain hanging straight up and down. It's just a good little metaphor. Those hydrogen ions pair up, and their end product is water, which is pretty neat. Much like our storms in Nor'easter Nation. But that whole process creates even more ATP for our body. And the whole net amount of ATP created by the Krebs cycle and electron transport chain gets kicked off again by glycolysis, the breakdown of glucose, is around 32 to 34 ATP total because it takes a couple of ATP to get started, which is pretty neat with the whole process. So what's most important to remember about the electron transport chain, though, is that it's a process called oxidative phosphorylation. Woo, coach, get your words straight. Big old 50-cent word, okay? But just remember that means that whole process is going to create more ATP, which is what we need as student athletes, okay? Basically, how this ties back to you is that all the foods you eat power your cells. Like I mentioned, all those cells that are vital to our muscles, our hearts, our brains, our lungs, etc. Carbs provide glucose. Great. Glucose, like I said, is gold for the body. It gives us that energy, okay? And that enters glycolysis, and here we go right into the Krebs cycle via pyruvate and coenzyme A and acetyl-CoA. Proteins, those are interesting because they can help form components of acetyl-CoA from amino acids, which is pretty neat. The basic building blocks of protein. And then fats are the components that transform, or have components, that can transform into acetyl-CoA as well as glucose. So they're kind of a hybrid, which is really neat. Those dietary healthy fats are very important. So at the end of the day, just remember that all of this means extra energy for you, and the more efficient your energy creation, the better you're going to perform on the court, the field, the ice, in the pool, on the course, and in the classroom. Thanks for joining me tonight.